Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. But before I jump into that, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, the people I'm interviewing, please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast and also the people that are coming on the show. If you can go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, that helps out a ton as well. So without further ado, today's guest is Sean Matson. So he's a former U.S. Navy SEAL platoon commander. After serving in the Navy, Sean went on to found multiple companies, which we're going to be talking today in more detail and sort of his story about, how he made that transition. It's great having you on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So we're going to start with a question you probably get a ton. Why don't we start from the beginning for people that maybe don't know who you are, haven't come across your content or your business. The question you probably get a lot is what made you want to become a Navy SEAL, right? And then another thing too is, I was interested because I saw that you went to college first and then, went into, the Navy and stuff. So could you also talk a little bit about why you decided to go to university first and then instead of just, going, straight out of high school?
Yeah. So first, for me, my dad was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. My great grandfather was in the Navy. My uncle was in the Coast Guard. So he straight away and went in the Coast Guard. So I had a family history of people that had been serving and had served, and so I wanted to. And early on, it was I wanted to be a pilot. Top Gun was really hot and heavy. When I was really young, and then at the age of 12, I was out in California, actually out in San Diego, and saw these guys running down the beach, and they had logs, and they were doing all this crazy stuff. And I was like, I told my mom, I was like, all right, that's what I want to go do. And at 12 years old, I was like, that's what I want to go do. I grew up swimming. I mean, I played other sports, but I really started, actually around 13 is really when I kind of started focusing in on swimming and swam, and ended up swimming at VMI and ended up swimming, travel and, swam all over the country. But it was just something I saw, and I was like, all right, that's what I want to go do. And after learning more about it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to go do. And then it was until probably, so talking about why I went to Virginia Military Institute. So I went to a college, but it was a military institution. And for me, it was more around, middle part of high school. There was an alumni that I was swimming with, and alumnus that I was swimming with. His name's Lang Meem. And, he talked a lot about VMI and just the brotherhood that was there, and everything. So I was like, all right, well, that's kind of interesting. You talked about how difficult it was, and how it's it's a strong school. It's a hard school to get into, first off, and it's also a hard school to finish. And so, I just saw it as another challenge. But then really for me, I was already going to go into the military, and I was already going to, go be a SEAL. And then it was like, well, if I'm going to go do it, might as well go lead them and become an officer. So that was kind of the decision in my mind, middle part of high school for, why I wanted to go to university first. That almost was taken away, or, not an opportunity for me, towards the latter part of VMI while I was there. About middle part of VMI, I was kind of making some hard decisions, and wasn't sure I was even going to get a commission as an officer. So, ultimately, again, my goal was to go be a SEAL. I didn't care if I was an officer or enlisted, once I got into VMI. So I could always go back and after finishing buds and then, getting my trident and everything like that, I could go back and go to another school and get my, go to OCS or something like that and become an officer. But, my goal was to become a SEAL first. And then, it just kind of worked out that I got to do both. So
Awesome. Yeah. So talking about that a little bit more in detail, going to the military university first. So when do you think it really set you up for, going into the SEALs, or do you think they could have done a better job? Like, was it more focused around, the academic side, or was it more focused around, fitness, and getting the majority of guys there, guys and girls, did majority of them go off to, go into like, special forces or Navy SEALs or, Marines or whatever. Right. And so like, what would you say about that?
So out of my graduating class, about 50%, almost 50% of us went into the military afterwards. So the other, I mean, but they have to be, so all 4 years that you're there, you have to do ROTC. And obviously you're wearing a uniform, you're doing other things like that. So, it's only 50% going to serve afterwards. The other 50%, either go to school or go into the civilian world. Some people go, law enforcement or other things like that. But out of my graduating class, about 50% went into the military and got a commission and became officers, or they enlisted. But VMI did a great job for it. But nothing that VMI did really prepared me for SEALs. In terms of in terms of the day-to-day stuff. I mean, like someone that goes to a regular university is just as prepared as I was. There's the thing is the biggest thing with SEALs or Delta or Special Forces or anything like that, it's really just the mindset that you go into it with. In knowing that you can do it and everything's temporary. Like right now we keep talking about COVID and when we'll ever get out of COVID and just blah blah blah. Like I wish it was back to the older days. It's a season we're in right now, and I don't look at it like it's holding me back, right? Like I figure out how to exploit what's going on and make the best of it, and not in a demeaning way or a schemy or slimy way, but you have to. I mean, when if you're sick or if an injury happens. I just had an injury on my leg that prevented me from doing. I've been training really hard to break a world record, and 3 days before the event, I had an injury. Yeah, was I frustrated? Was I disappointed? Yes, but for a few hours, and then hey, it is what it is. Life happens. It sucks. There's nothing I could do about it, and that's back to the kind of the beginning point of it is like it's something I teach my kids right now. It's like, listen, it's a season. You can only control the things you can physically control, and you have control over. Anything that's external. I mean, politics, what's happening in the media, all this stuff is stuff you cannot control. So why worry about it? Focus on the things you can control. I know right now that like my business right now, we have roughly 30 employees. I'm 100% in control of them and what happens here. So if we fail, it's because of me. If we succeed, it's because of us, our team. So always look at it like that.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some incredible points. Now moving to when you graduated and then went into buds. Talking about that, why do you think you were you preparing yourself mentally? Like I know you can't really prepare yourself mentally for that type of school because the buds, because it's just like so crazy and hectic and stuff. But why do you think you made it through? Right? Was was there any moments that you were like, okay, I sort of understand, I'm able to just do anything I set my mind to, and it was just personal confidence? Or like what was sort of the reason behind you making it all the way through in graduating?
Yeah, so anybody that makes it through, or everybody that I know that has made it through, typically they have some defining moment. Most people's defining moment is during Hell Week, where it's just like, okay, and it was, for me, it was not a, I don't I, I I don't know if I can do it. It was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Right. So I knew I could do anything that I put my mind to. And it was just, I've always believed that, and I've always stuck to it. I've always looked at how to turn, a crappy situation and turn it good. I try to make, the best of, again, just controlling the things that I can control. It's just how I grew up. I don't know if it was some of my upbringing from my mom was a single mom taking care of us and things, and I was teased growing up because I was dyslexic, all these little things that you just have through your life in life situations. I mean, I was never one to just be like, woe is me, the world's against me. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'd always figure out an angle. Again, I would try, I said it earlier, exploit it, find an angle, figure out how to make it, a crappy situation positive. There's always, and again, it's just, there's things you can control, and there's things you can't control. And I worry about the things that I can control and really focus on those and how to make it better. As life happens, I'm all about, and it's something I always say is, action beats inaction 100% of the time. So if I move forward or do something, even if it's in the wrong direction, start a business, and I'm plowing forward, and come to find out 6 months later it's actually the wrong direction for the business, right? I just learned a tremendous amount of stuff in that last 6 months, right? I might have to pivot, and I might have to go a different direction, but that's fine. I just learned a lot of value in that 6 months that I would have never gotten if I would have sat here and tried to make the perfect plan, or try to figure out, like, well, what if it doesn't work, or this or that, or just questions. Like, action will always beat inaction.
Mhm.
So I'm a firm believer in that. Now, if you keep making those mistakes or setbacks, then that's where you're going to have an issue, right? So you figure out, evaluate them, adjust things that aren't working, stick to the things that are working, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, 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 100%. And like that coincides with what I hear a lot from entrepreneurs, is just always take action, always take action, always take action, right? Because like if you don't take that action, even like you were saying, even if it was like 6 months or a year, or the business just goes like completely upside down, and you lose it, you still learn a ton from that experience that you wouldn't have had before if you didn't sort of run that business, right? You guys go through like some of the, yeah, like the most stressful environment that you can go through, high anxiety, high stress, really high demands, high pressure. How do you guys sort of deal with that? Like, how do you guys sort of cope with that, dealing with like, even afterbuds and going off to, to war, which is the worst probably situation you can ever put yourself into? How do you sort of deal with that? And how do you sort of mentally sort of cope with like, these high stress levels? And it relates a little bit to business, not fully, because war is a completely different thing. But business can be very high stress, high pressure, really demanding environment. So like, giving advice to that, how have you sort of built your sort of mindset up?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about stress, right? Like, I mean, we all have stress, and stress and fear, are obviously, their senses, their feelings, their body, your body's reaction to something, right? And anytime you're in these situations, right, your body's telling you something, and maybe you don't know exactly what it is, right? So um the best thing is to listen to what's going on, right? Like, so if you're stressed out, figure out why you're stressed out, right? So, okay, I'm stressed out because I can't figure out this problem. Well, that then you need to devote your resources to that problem, figure out the problem, so you can no longer be stressed. It's taking a systematic approach to stuff, and but also not dwelling on the fact that maybe it's not something like, okay, right now, right? COVID. I have no control over what happens, what doesn't happen, and I'm not going to sit here and stress about it. I'm not going to sit here and lose sleep over, can I do something? I mean, the governor comes out and says X, Y, and Z. Some things I believe in, some things I disagree with, some things whatever. But you know what? That's the world that we live in. I can't, I'm not going to sit here and try to change those things, or I shouldn't say, not to try to change them, but I'm not going to sit here and try to stress over them, right? Again, I control what happens here within these four walls, whether I'm right now I'm at a business, but I'm, business or at home, I can control everything that happens in there, right? If I want to bring 1,000 people over to my house and invite them over to my house, I'm going to do it, right? If I want to bring all these people into to MATBOCK and things like that, I'm going to do it, right? It's just, I can control what happens in here. I can't control what happens when I walk outside this door and go to Walmart or Target or wherever else, place that we go, or business. I respect, their opinion. That's what they can control. And that's, that's just what I believe in that, to, you know, um, you know, everyone talks about, there's different, sayings and stuff like that. The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. That's one funny thing. And then, during Hell Week, in buds, I would always, again, it's everything has a season. When you're in buds, you have evolution and evolution and evolution. So, I would focus on just getting to the next evolution and just keep, I wouldn't worry about 3 days from now, right? And the guys that stress about that stuff, like they got so worried, like the night before, guys would get so stressed out. They're like, tomorrow we got this coming up and this coming up. I'm like, all right, whatever, you know, sometimes it would happen, sometimes it wouldn't happen because, the instructors change things up a little bit.
Hmm.
And some guys would get so stressed out, they would quit before the evolution even started, just because the fear of knowing that it's coming. And it's just like, why? You
Hmm.
know? Or they would see someone else quit and they're like, oh my gosh, if that guy quit. I mean, we had a guy that ran 4 miles in the soft sand, and he was running low 24 minutes. So he was holding sub 6 minute miles basically for 4 miles in the soft sand, wearing pants and boots, right? Incredible runner and just phenomenal at PT across physical training. So, I mean, pull ups, push ups, running, everything. I mean, he was just like a machine. And like, I mean, it was tough to keep this guy even in sight. And I'm a decent runner. And it was tough to even keep this guy in sight. And the first day we got surf tortured, we're in the surf zone, we're throwing our rocket chairs and we're getting ready to go in there. And literally, like, as soon as we touch the water and we go back, he gets up, runs to the bell, rings it, quits. And I think it was like 6 or 7 people around him immediately quit. Like, I find out later, and the class and stuff like that he was the first person to quit in our class like that. And it was just like, holy cow! Like, but to me, I wasn't like, oh man, if he can't make it, then I can't. I never thought that. Like, as soon as I heard someone ring the bell, I was like, okay, well, I'm closer now to making it. Actually, I took it as the opposite. I was like, it's statistics. It's like,
Hmm.
I know that a bunch of us are going to make it. Well, not a bunch of us, but at least 10-15% of us are going to make it. I just have to keep sticking out at it, and just so every time the bell rang or every time a guy quit. And I mean, there were some guys that got injured. And I knew that my biggest fear coming into buds was not that I was going to quit, was that I was going to get injured. And
Hmm.
so I made sure while I was there, right? I didn't put myself into situations where I could possibly get injured. So I didn't go out with guys on the weekend, or I didn't, after the day was over, I went and stretched and I took care of my body as best as I could, because, I knew that injuries were really, I mean, you're pushing your body as hard as you can for six to 8 months. And it's like, injuries can happen. So I just wanted to make sure and give myself an environment, again, something that I can control, that I wasn't just going to go out there and be like, well, hey, it's Friday night, let's go burn it down and go drink with the boys. There's plenty of that time afterwards. So I
Hmm.
focused on just making sure that I didn't, I can control this. And it's like, I need to focus on not getting injured.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, 100%. Doing like basic maintenance for your body is like probably very, 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 very important during those, like, because you're pushing your body to your absolute limit during those times, right? So now
Yeah.
talking about that, like, two things. Did like what was your favorite part of all of Buds? Like, what did you enjoy the most? What was your worst part that you were like, this absolutely sucks, I hate this, and I never want to do it again? And yeah.
So it's kind of weird because they're both kind of the same thing. The thing that I loved about Buds the most is the guys and being around everybody. So the way they work it for officers is, so you do Buds with one class, and then you wait till the next class comes, and then you take them through your advanced training. But so I I really enjoyed just the day-to-day being with the guys, going through it with the same guys, and us all being together going through this hard time, right? So that's why I said it's kind of funny because of the same thing. So, and the thing that I hated the most was the day-to-day. It sucks because it's 6 months of just suck, and every day. So there, I mean, there are little like, yeah, that sucked more than that or whatever, but like the hardest part about buds is buds. And I know it sounds like sounds like a cop out, but it's not. It's just like 6 months of, you know, pushing your body to the limit. Um, someone else telling you what to do from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. Very little freedom, and just constantly getting put in situations that suck, and not having any control over. Okay, we only have to do this for 2 hours. It's like they don't let you wear. You can start wearing watches in some of the later phases, but like, you have no idea how long this is going to last. It's just like, this sucks. It's just going to keep going. And sometimes they change things on you. And it's like, even though they're like, all right, well, this is, you got lunch at noon or whatever. And now it's like 12:30 and we're still somewhere else. And they're like, they just play mind games with you. And so you just never know. So
Yeah.
like I said, the thing I loved the most was the guys and going through it with everybody, for that time. But then also the thing that I hated the most was just buds in general, the day to day. So
Yeah, 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 100%. It's just like, like the day to day just wears you down. Like it's just consistently just like having event after event after event, right? That must be insanely hard to do.
yeah.
Now moving from pretty much the Navy into making that transition. When did you sort of decide? Like I was doing some research and I saw that you started MATBOCK in like 2000, I believe it's 2006 or 2007. That the inception sort of happened with your buddy. This is you were still in the Navy, like SEALs at this time, right? So like what like, did you always sort of have an idea of that, like after SEALs, that you wanted to start your own business, or how did sort of like the entrepreneurship flair, running your own own business sort of start?
Yeah. So I mean, I was like, I'm doing 20 years. I'm gonna make a career out of being a SEAL. Again, all I ever wanted to do since I was 12 was to be a SEAL. So business was never even a thought that I wanted to be an entrepreneur or do. I mean, I got a civil engineering degree, and just because I like numbers better than words. But the inception of MATBOCK did start in 2006. So literally like a year after we had finished Buds, we started this, but it really just came to us. It was like, we were flying up to Alaska, and my now business partner, Zach, we were sitting there and we're like, this cargo net system is horrible. Like, why hasn't someone done anything about it? And so for an 8-hour flight up to Alaska, while we were going up there for cold weather training, we literally just sat down and redesigned this entire cargo net system.
Wow.
And yeah, and so we're like, all right, so we got a patent for it, started working through, and that was actually, I think it was 2007. And from then until 2010, we just kind of kept coming up, kind of kept working on this idea, and then in 2010 we actually decided to form the LLC MATBOCK. And then it took us another 3 years later, so it wasn't until 2013 did we even have a product on the market, which was the cargo net system. Excuse me. And then but we kept getting people like, oh man, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And so as we were kind of just living our life in the platoon space and being SEALs, we saw a need for really innovative company. And so we just kind of, that was the cornerstone for us, was like, okay, if we're going to do this, then how do we help the active duty guys that are still there create and develop these products? And now we have this pipeline, and it's taken us 7 years now to kind of figure this whole thing out. We have patent attorneys, we have manufacturer partners, we have these things, we know how to get source materials, we know how to do this, we know how to kind of do the supply chain management piece of it. So how do we help these guys that are currently still active get these products to market? And so that was really what really started feeding MATBOCK and coming up with these innovative products. And then Zach got out and went to med school for a few years. I stayed active. Um, and again, we were still just kind of keeping MATBOCK as kind of just a side hustle, side project type thing, and kind of just building it, letting it kind of go on the side. And then I went through a pretty nasty divorce. I had 2 kids. And really that for me was my reasoning for getting out. I wanted to be around my kids, and make sure that I could be a good dad to them. And so I made the transition out off active duty, went into the reserves, and then really started focusing heavy on MATBOCK, as well as, Zach was doing the same thing. He decided that med school wasn't the thing for him, after 3.5 years of med school, and was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And so, we both just kind of had these kind of weird life pivots, and it was like, let's 100% focus on MATBOCK. We had generated some traction. We had some products that were selling, decent. And then it's just been a rocket ship since then, since both of us started putting, full time in.
Yeah, no, 100%, and that's great to hear. One thing, like at the beginning there, what I thought was really interesting was like you guys are already like on, like, like you guys are already Navy SEALs. Like this is like professional level of, like, it's like sort of equivalent to like being in like the NHL or NFL, right? It's like at the highest level, right, in your sort of industry, right? And then you guys are just like, oh well, we'll just sit down and design a like a whole new like patent and stuff, and like start a new business on the side, while you guys are already doing like this intense job already, right, which demands so much of you. And talking about that, was there any other guy, like, in the SEALs that sort of like, I know now, like, a lot of guys come out and then it's they'll start their own business, like or get onto social media and all these other types of stuff, and I absolutely love it, because I think more military, like I think what you learn from the military is like you can use it to run your business. And I think military people are probably one of the best business leaders, because you learn some of the best leadership in the world, right, under some of the worst circumstances. And you guys work like hell, right? Like you guys work your ass off because you have to in the military. So yeah, but like,
Yeah.
in the Navy SEALs, was there other guys like that, when you're sort of having this idea and sort of talking, like you must have had conversations with other guys in the teams, right? Like, was anybody else like sort of having like the same sort of mindset, like saying, hey, like I'm trying to get like a clothing line or like an energy drink, or like this other type of business on the side that they were just doing for fun?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people that, at least in my era, Zach's era and stuff like that, they had some side things, but mainly it was like, um, real estate things, where they were buying properties, fixing them up, and then turning around and things like that. But no one really had other like product related ventures, or direct to consumer type things, or really kind of in that space. They were mainly, like I said, uh, real estate type things. But um, you know, coincidentally enough, I mean, a lot of my buddies that then had, so when we were still active, that was, but when they got out, they kind of all went the entrepreneur way. So I got buddies that are, I got one buddy that's doing some really cool stuff with water, power. So using waves. He was always a big surfer and stuff like that. And so he just launched a company not too long ago. Got some funding out in California for some alternative power supply. And so it was just one guy. They just got some seed funding, so he was just thinking. But other guys, doing distilleries and doing like clothing lines, as you were talking about. Guys that have created these massive private labeling companies that will private label shirts and apparel and things like that. Actually, one of them's we actually, this shirt made by them. We do all of our shirts and stuff like that from a guy named Ryan Williams from Industry Threadworks. But yeah, it's really neat to see all that kind of come full circle, and guys And one of my mentors who was a VMI alum, class of '82. His name's Bob Lalvin. He always talks about how when history's written, we'll see everybody that has started a business post 9/11 will be that next generation. We'll see kind of that next generation of what we saw post World War, where these guys had been battle tested and coming off of that and starting businesses, and what thrived in the Industrial Revolution and everything like that is and just these massive companies that were built and created, and when I say massive, I don't mean in size necessarily, but just a large number of businesses, and also the people that support those type of businesses. There's I think that there's only maybe a handful of people that that do not like veterans. But I mean, when you're talking kind of like the last last thing of where it's not something that will divide people, it's like veterans, and military. I mean, every other topic is so divisive now, and things where it's so like the military and veterans, wanting to buy, veteran owned products and things like that. So, hopefully that stays, and it continues. But I think even if it sways a little bit, it won't be enough to change things, because people still just genuinely, I think, as a whole, genuinely care about other Americans, Canadians and guys in UK. I mean, the nationalism, the pride that you have for your country, wherever you're from, right? That is something that you see, especially in more developed countries. You don't see that in places like in Africa, or Iraq, Afghanistan, places like that. I mean, and that's why when you look at some of these policies, they don't match, right? Like, Iraq is never going to be a democratic country like the United States, right? Like, it's never going to have a running, functioning government where there's a police and military and all this stuff like that, and they have that, right? But it's never going to be at the level that the United States is, or Canada or UK, and for us to think that that's going to happen is just odd to me, because for thousands of years they weren't built that way. They're very tribal, they're very secular and tribal, where that's just their culture, and let them have that, right? So it's trying to fit the square peg in the round hole and say, hey, what worked for us is going to work for you guys. No, it's a completely different model. It's not going to be that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with that. Is like, the world is like, if you're talking about the world in general, it's like you have so many different cultures and like histories and like what everybody's, what they've grown up with, and changing that is like, you're like, let's say if you're like trying to help a country, or, something like of that nature, trying to change that isn't going to happen in a decade. You're trying to change thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history and culture, which is literally impossible. Like, it's extremely hard to do, right? Like, trying to do that type of stuff, or, trying to help other countries or stuff like that. It's not an easy task, right? It's like, dealing with
and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, dealing with the general public, and like just the general public of like countries, or but like general public of like different countries or the world, is like so hard to do, right? It's such a difficult task. One thing I do want to mention though is that I'm always really surprised that when people sort of hate on like veterans or, police or, people of that nature. Like, yeah, there is a couple, bad apples, but that's not the majority of like, you can't just bask like, like so many people are black or white, right? Like, like with like, it's either bad or it's good. There's no gray middle, right? So that's I never really understand that, because like you like being in the SEALs or being in like the military or police force, it's like you guys, you guys are like are sort of like do what you're told, right? Like it's not at your level that you get to decide saying like, hey, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go do this, we're gonna do that. It's decided at like the national sort of level within the government, right? So I never really understand that about hating on like, like regular, let's say regular infantry or regular, like guys at the lower level. It's like they're not making the decisions. They're just trying to do their task that's being put in front of them to the best of their ability.
Well, and the other thing is for I always believed, and I mean, so I'm going to say always, but I mean, there were times, right? Like, internally and with my platoon mates and stuff like that, we would joke on regular conventional guys and stuff like that. But it's a fun joke, right? It's not like, hey, get out of here. You're a turd. It's fun poking and prodding at each other, right? It's like, two sports teams, kind of picking on each other type things like that, rivalries type stuff, right? Like that. It's not in a demeaning way, or at least I never took it at that way. And I hope, guys that I would joke on like that never took it at that way. But I always, and I made it a point to make sure that support guys, everything. Like I was always around them to try to learn from them, because they bring so much, again, value to it. I mean, to think that we're just going to go out by ourselves and kick in doors and be the heroes. It's like, that's such a small part, right? Like, we were the quarterback or, whatever, doing it and getting the attention. But it was like, man, we had so many other people on the field playing with us to make whatever happen, and it's like they're just as important. And so I always try to go in and learn what they were doing. So I always felt like it also helped me become better at what I was doing, because I knew from what they were doing. So like when they come off of an op or something like that, I would go back where the intel guys were, and I would just pick their brain. Like, hey, what are you guys looking at? What are we researching? What's your thought process to how are we targeting this guy? Why are we targeting this guy? And just learn from them, right? Because he or she is never going outside the wire and going to see what I was doing, right? And so we would communicate back and forth. Hopefully what I was bringing them back helped bring the picture to what they were trying to put together. One, and I did want to go back to one other thing. I was talking about like Africa and other places, and one of the things that you were mentioning, like, just that hatred. And honestly, I think that one of the biggest things that has happened is we've all just become so complacent with and with what we have, right? Like, because when you look at, and I think it was Dave Ramsey that actually posted this, and then I went and did my own research on it and looked at it. But like, if you make, I think it's like $32,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
And for some people that's a lot of money, and for some people that's like a day. I mean, and but if you make $32,000 a year, you're in the top 1% in the world in terms of income.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so hard to conceptualize. But when I know I've traveled and had the ability through the Navy, obviously, to travel. I've been to Mexico, I've been to South Africa, I've been all over Africa, I've been all over Iraq, all over Europe, and seen all these different areas. And when I think about like a place like Africa that I've been to, and one kind of side story, like we were paying this lady who was our housekeeper, I think it was like $600 a month, right, for a group of 8 of us. And she lived in a a guest house behind our house. She lived in a guest house behind ours. She had free internet, medical care, and got to use all the everything that she needed. She had her own stove and kitchen and things. But she cleaned our house and did our laundry every week for a month, and she made $600. And so she asked us as soon as we got there, she was like, "Hey, I want to make another $200." And we're all like, "Shit." I mean, for 6 dudes, $100 a month. Yeah, that easy, $120 a month or whatever, right? But I went and talked to the embassy, and I was like, "Hey, this is what's going on. We're going to pay her more." And literally, I got told no, and I was like, "Well, why not? I mean, it's nothing, you know." And he was like, "She already makes more than a doctor does here," and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like what?" But it's because the value of that dollar is so different, right? But I could go and get a sandwich and food at a pretty decent restaurant, right, for $1, right? And I mean, you're talking a full meal,
Mhm.
but it's just the power of that dollar was so much more there, and it's so different to think about. But it's just one of those things. It puts it into perspective because but a place like Africa or countries. I mean, there's obviously more developed countries, but this was in particular. This was in Chad, but you know, when you even leave outside of a developed city and go out and see hundreds of thousands of people in these villages, and literally their life is all they do all day long is how to survive, right?
Mhm.
Like food, water, shelter. Okay, I'm living another day. And the next day, food, water, shelter. I'm living another day. Like they're not worried about social media. They're not worried about who's trending on TikTok or things like that. It's literally survival. And you know, but when you're there and you're talking to these people, man, they're the nicest people. They're hardworking. They do. I mean, they're out there working hard, doing what they don't care about what's going on the Kardashians or some other TV show. They don't like they are they are very well happy with the life that they're living
Mhm.
because this is all they know. But again, that's where the disconnect is. It's like all I know is my life and what's gone through in my life and things like that. I don't worry or judge or sit here and be like, man, I have to be like that person, or I have to be like that person. Um, this actually made me think about something. A buddy of mine just posted this yesterday, and I thought it was brilliant, right? Talking about mindset, and he goes, the the the, the lion is the king, right? It's not the elephant who's bigger. It's not the cheetah that's faster. It's the lion. The lion is king because of mindset. That's the only reason the lion is king, because he's a mindset. Because of mindset. Again, I mean, the elephant's much bigger than he is. The cheetah's faster than he is, but the lion is king because of the mindset. And I was like, man, that is brilliant. That's exactly right. It is. It's so true.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like through that conversation that you just talked about, I just want to add some points to it. One thing on just pretty much going off pretty much what you just said about the lion and stuff. I don't know what I was watching. It might have been a podcast, but it was a guy talking about special forces selection. And he was pretty much just saying about hey, if you can get a guy who's 10% smarter, 10%, let's say, fitter or faster, or another guy who just 10% wants it more. Pretty much, he says the majority of the time, the guy who wants it 10% more will beat out the other two guys because they're just willing to work harder, willing to do more because they just want it, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
absolutely love
Absolutely.
that. Now talking about the currency and exchange is absolutely crazy. Like I went to Thailand, and it was absolutely insane there. I was using the Canadian dollar, and the US dollar is much stronger than the Canadian dollar right now, but you could get like amazing meals, like absolutely amazing meals for like 50 cents, like a full meal, like a full huge bowl of like pho, or like, you know, like these like pad thai or other stuff that was like, or like this green curry that's like some of the best food I've ever had in my life for like 50 cents.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. And then what you're saying too is like when you go out of these cities, like we were in Bangkok, and then we went to, you know, Chiang Mai, yeah, I think it's Chiang Mai, or like these, yeah, and Pai and other areas, right? But we had motorbikes, and we went out a little bit further out from like the, you know, the major tourist areas to see a little bit more of the country. And we went down into this farm, and it's absolutely crazy. It's this farm, and you see like all this like a little bit of technology and stuff and tractors and stuff, but then you go to pretty much where these people are sleeping, and it's like, you know, it's just like these four stilts with a little like shed over top, and they're just sleep like four
Yeah.
stilts off the ground with a blanket and pillow and, you know, some rice and some other stuff, and they're just chilling there, and they're just like having a grand old time. And I was like, this is absolutely insane. Like if you took somebody from like Canada or the US and put them into that environment, like they just wouldn't be able to cope with it, because like you were saying, is like we've just got so used to having AC, and, you know, having a house that protects us from like the, you know, conditions, and like, you know, being able to go to a grocery store and just pick up food and all this other stuff, right, is absolutely insane. And then going a little bit further back for, you know, talking about, you know, when you were working, you know, in the SEALs, and you go to the back end, I was like, that actually really relates with business, right? It's like you guys are the front end, right? Like you guys are at the front, like, you know, front end, like that's similar to like, let's say sales or the marketing team, right? But you guys actually spent the time, which is, I think is a great idea, is the sales is going back into like the back end of like, let's say accounting or technology or whatever, right? And learning their business, learning what they're doing, because you have a better communication, like you were saying, right? It's like if you guys are going out and you guys, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the intelligence or the back end, right? It's not like you guys aren't going to flow as well as if you went in there and you understand, all right, why are the reasons we're doing this, what's the intelligence, all this type of stuff, like, you know, or learning more about the business and going out to the front. So yeah, like I just wanted to add that, because I think you brought up like some amazing topics. So I know we,
You know, one other thing before we pivot to the next thing, you know, talking about that, right? So, you know, going back to business real fast, you know, one thing that I get asked, or, you know, I know people struggle with is like, well, I want to start a business, but I just don't know what, right? Or, you know, I really want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know how to start it or do this, right? And again, back to what I said earlier, action beats inaction all the time, right? So the thing that the thing that I will say, and the thing that I suggest to people is learn skills now, right? So if you enjoy social media, learn everything there is about social media, how to build a brand, how to create ads, how to, you know, shoot content, how to do all these things. I mean, there's so much free um, videos and tutorials and guides out there to do that. If you're someone that likes math, you know, sit down and take a accounting class. Learn, again, just learning things that, so when, or volunteering at another business and saying, hey, I really want to get into social media. I'd love to shoot some content for you and edit it and do my photos and do this stuff. But just learning that skill before you start a business is going to help you. And who knows, maybe doing that skill, whatever it is, or learning a couple different skills, will give you that idea of like, oh, there's got to be a better way to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to create that now, you know? And so I think that that's such a lost thing, because people just like, they just want, I don't know what I want to do. And so they just keep, you know, meandering on and never actually commit to anything. And it's like, you just wasted 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of time where you could learn skills. Like, I know how to do basic, you know, photo editing, you know, taking out backgrounds of images, which doesn't sound cool, but like, it took me a long time to learn how to do it years ago, right? But now I've gotten more proficient with it. I can do, you know, basic things within Adobe and other things. Now, am I as good as my, you know, graphics guys? Hell no, right? They make my stuff look, you know, 10 times better than I could ever make it. But I don't need to be at their level, right? If they're busy doing something else, I can get something put together and then send it to them, and they can make it look professional, right?
Mhm.
I just make it look, like a second grader did it, but that's okay. At least I got it, above what a kindergartner could do or something. So,
Mhm. Yeah, 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 no, like 100% on that as well. Is like, and that's why you're like you're the leader, right? Because you understand all that. You understand like that what it takes, right? Like the business about like you just said there is like I don't have to be the best at everything. I just need to know a little bit about it so I know who to hire, who to bring on, and what it should look like when it's done, right?
yeah.
And now moving to I know we got a little bit of time left before we'll wrap it up here. I just wanted to ask you another question here. So schooling in like North America right now, this is a huge topic. At my generation, like I'm 20 years old, and I have this conversation a lot with a lot of university, like in Canada, a lot of guys, girls going to university, going to college, and stuff like that, and sort of the disconnect from university to actually the job market, and like what university is teaching you from actually getting a job and stuff, and which there's some backlash, and students are getting mad at it, right? Because how it's sort of set up. What do you think should change about the educational system? If you have any thoughts on it, if you don't, that's fine too. But what would you change in the educational system? And also, what would you say to somebody that's maybe in high school or university? What else should they be doing if they want to go into business and they don't really know that so far what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, one thing for education, I mean, I so there's obviously formal education and self-education, right? So we all have, like, if you go to university, you go to college, you're getting formal education. I mean, even middle school, high school, that's formal education, right? But it might not be what you're passionate about, right? So you have to take that and understand that, right? Like, I didn't like reading and history and other things like that. So I did engineering, right? So, but I didn't really like engineering, and I wasn't going to make a career out of engineering, right? So, but there are things that I learned, Excel, accounting, how to read numbers, right? Like in it, and problem solve. I mean, engineering is 100% problem solving. That's what it is. So, you know, understanding that whatever you do school wise, it's not there to give you a job, right? It's education. Education is to learn things. Now, um, I hate school. I never want to go back to school, but I also have never stopped learning. I learn, and if you tell me something that I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't sound quite right, or you know, before I sit here and have a conversation with you, especially if I don't know, or if I haven't, if I'm not sure on, I might ask you some more questions just to understand your opinion, or to understand more of what it is. Um, but then I'm going to go do research for myself, and then I'm going to make the determination from there. I try to look at a lot of things. I every morning, I look at Fox News. I look at CNN, and throughout the day, I look at both. I read the headlines. I read the stuff, and I look at what both is saying, because they're both, one skews one way and one skews the other way, and to think that neither of them do, you're an idiot. I mean, every news outlet, every place you get your information, it's trying to persuade you one way or another. Even on social media, the people you follow, same thing, right? Like, there are people out there on social media that only talk about all the doom and gloom that they've got in their life, and they probably exaggerate 90% of it because they just want that to happen, right? Like, they're making what's the saying? They're making a mountain out of an anthill, or whatever it is. So it's just like, they take, but so I think the thing is the one of the reasons why I never went back to get an MBA, for example. I believe, and I still do, right? There's nothing there that's going to benefit me more than what I just have learned over the last decade plus, right? Will I learn how to do something more effectively? Will I make great connections? Absolutely. Will I guess I should say, will I learn something? Yes. There's stuff that I'm going to learn from it, but what the value of that 1 or 2 year program based off of what I'm already doing, and because I have to focus on that for 2 years, will it affect my business? Yes. My business will slow down growing if I go do business school. Um, and I don't think coming out of business school will it make it go faster than what we're going. Um, so, I think it's just understanding that education does have a place, right? And it has to be a balance of formal education and self education, right? If you're someone, well, right, you have created a podcast, you enjoy podcasting. If you're not becoming a student of other podcasts and watching what they're doing, you're failing yourself at that, right? I look at other entrepreneurs and see what's working for them. I subscribe to companies that I want to emulate. I watch how they're marketing to their customers. I watch how they're engaging with their customers because I want to do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so same thing with you, right? You should be looking and educating yourself, subscribing to their podcast channel, subscribing to their stuff, and consuming that data to make yourself better.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I agree with that. Is like the old saying of like, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. It's already being created. Just look at what somebody else is doing, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be doing it a lot better. Try and emulate it, and then try and add 1% more value to it, and try and make it a little bit better, right? And that's what I do. I look at podcasts. And I see what they're doing. I see why, why they're successful, or like how they've grown. And then I go off and, try and emulate that. I know we're coming to the end here.
Yeah.
So I'll wrap it up quickly, but yeah, thank you again, man, for coming on the show. Like I had like this conversation was really interesting, really insightful. And it brought up a lot of interesting topics that I think, my viewers are going to like. But yeah, thank you again for coming on the show. Where can people find out more about your
Max,
company?
thanks.
Talking like if you want to talk a little bit about like what you guys are doing, what you're selling, all that type of good stuff, where they can find out more about you, your personal brand as well.
Yeah, so the easiest way would just be so I don't have to rattle off like 6 places. The easiest way would just go to Instagram or Facebook. I'm at Sean SEAN.Matson on those, as well as in LinkedIn and other things. But from there, I've got links in my profile to the other businesses. We have everything from MATBOCK, which is innovative technologies and products, to we just launched a supplement company back in January, and a medical device company. So we've got a little bit of everything that we're working on and building.
Awesome. That's absolutely great to hear. And thank you again for coming on the show, Sean.
Yeah, appreciate it, Max. Thanks.